What's up, everybody? You are listening to the Strength and Knowledge Podcast. This is your host, Dr. Zach Baker of R2P and R2P Academy. And today I have with us Julia Merwin, who it's hard to believe, but I have now known for about 10 years in a variety of different capacities. Julia is down in Florida right now. And Julia, thanks for finding the time to come on with us.
Thank you for having me.
So I was trying to think, we originally met when you were a high school intern of ours, back, I want to say like junior year of high school, which is going on, God, probably 8, 9, almost 10 years at this point.
Yes, I graduated high school in 2016, so a long time ago.
Cool.
But yeah, we definitely met my junior year because I was injured and I stumbled upon R2P, I think accidentally, but so glad that I did.
Now, I remember that was the first year that we were open. It was just Josh and I. We didn't really have a full-time front desk at the time. We honestly didn't really know what the heck that we were doing. But we somehow crossed paths from a patient care standpoint. And then you and 3 others were our first group of high school students that we ever took. And it's pretty cool just to see what you and some of the others have gotten themselves into at this point. And for those who are listening, do you mind giving them a little bit of a background of what you did after high school from a collegiate standpoint, both athletically and academically, and then bring them up to speed on what you're doing now?
Okay, I was a competitive gymnast my entire life, so I started at age 5. Took that all the way through high school, and then I was fortunate enough to be able to compete at West Virginia University as a Division I collegiate gymnast there. Absolutely loved every second of it. I was a COVID grad, so my season actually got cut short. Our season ended, I think it was less than 24 hours before what was supposed to be our senior night gymnastics meet. So that was kind of sad, but nonetheless, had the best 4 years. Of course, riddled with injuries throughout both my time in high school and college, hence how I found R2P, but still such an amazing experience doing gymnastics. Loved every second of it. And college is where I kind of found my love for health and fitness. I always knew I was interested in it. And I initially thought I wanted to be a physical therapist just because it was so familiar to me because I was always injured. And I interned at R2P, loved it. I thought it was so fun. We actually had a professional football player at the time, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever working with him. But then in college, once I started strength and conditioning, with our strength and conditioning coach, I realized that that was something I was incredibly passionate about. So that's kind of where my real love for working out, fueling my body began. So in college, I ended up majoring in sport and exercise psychology because it seemed interesting to me. It kind of seemed like second nature, especially being in gymnastics. It's a very mental sport. So it just kind of came easily. And then I actually started with a business minor, which I should have probably kept, but ended up switching out the business minor for a minor in nutrition and food studies, which also is very helpful, goes hand in hand with what I do now. And I am currently a certified personal trainer, a National Academy of Sports Medicine certified personal trainer, and I have my own personal training business.
That's awesome. Did you ever envision kind of going that route and trying to be on your own? And feel free to talk about a little bit what you do from a business standpoint. I know what I have seen is you have a pretty good online presence with regards to workouts and nutrition, but do you mind giving a little bit more detail on kind of what that has transpired into?
So initially, this was not my plan at all, but I'm very glad I ended up going this way. My first idea for my dream job when I was younger was physical therapy. And then I realized I was not a big fan of school. Although I'm the best student ever, I refused to get anything wrong. I refused to get anything less than an A. I just didn't actually enjoy school. And with my major being sport and exercise psychology, if I wanted to be a sport and exercise psychologist, I had to get my doctorate. And once again, school just wasn't my favorite thing. I hated sitting still, hated being in a classroom. I even dabbled with maybe going into interior design because that's just another thing that I enjoy. But then I think I randomly stumbled upon like some health and fitness YouTubers, which like, sounds really weird, but I was like, that is what I want to do with my life. Like, I just thought it was so cool the reach that social media gave people in the health and fitness space and being able to work with people all over the world. So, since I was a COVID grad 2020, I was already a certified personal trainer. I got certified in October of 2019. So, I was already working at our campus rec center, training clients in the gym there. I was also working at the F45 studio at my campus rec center. So I was working with people in person, but when COVID happened and gyms shut down, I was kind of forced to, not forced, but I kind of thought to myself, like, this is my time to just hit the ground running and go full steam ahead on myself because I had nothing to lose. Like, I wasn't fully an adult yet, like, just getting into the real world, but like, the real world was kind of shut down. So I just kind of took advantage of the situation, completely wung starting my own business and creating a whole online health and fitness space. And it ended up working out. It took lots of trial and error, lots of learning as I went. And it honestly took like years for it to actually be like successful and at the point where it is now, but I wouldn't change a thing.
No, and that's awesome. And I think I'm glad that you talked about when you were in college, you were sports and exercise psych. You were involved a little bit in business, involved in nutrition. So your interests kind of changed academically a little bit. You were interested in doing PT. Then you got more of the strength conditioning world. And I think people get almost forced into picking what they want to do so early. And then they feel like they're stuck. Like they graduate from high school, they got to pick a major, and then they got to make a career out of that major. And it's almost bad if they try to stray from that or do anything different. And part of when I was in undergrad, I was an exercise science major, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do something health, wellness, fitness, medical, but I didn't know if that meant being a collegiate strength conditioning coach. And that was what I was leaning towards. I was exercise science. I got CSCS certified by the NSCA. And that was actually a requirement from our undergrad, which I'm glad they did that because it provides a little bit of kind of validation and extra credentials to what you're doing as you try to enter into the real world and sell yourself for whatever job you're trying to do. But then I got injured a bunch. I tore my ACL twice. I dislocated both my shoulders. So I started thinking, maybe I'll go the medical route. And then I started to realize the only thing in medical school that's even interesting to me is the orthopedic side. And unfortunately, that's like maybe 10% of the medical curriculum. And I don't think I could sit through all of the years of medical school and the different rotations to hopefully pursue that route and enjoy it. So PT ended up for me being kind of that fit of what made the most sense. And then I think I'm glad that you talked about just kind of the different backgrounds that you have, because prior to going into what you're doing currently, which is largely online, you had done the in-person stuff. You had done it in a one-on-one environment as a personal trainer. You had been at F45 working in a group environment. And I think there's two big takeaways from that. One is you don't really know what you like professionally until you try it. And there's a lot of people that think, oh, I want to be a team strength conditioning coach. It's like, all right, well, have you ever interned or have you ever tried that? Like, do you know what it's like trying to manage? If you're a football strength conditioning coach, you've got 100 and some athletes that you're trying to track and write programs for. Or if you're a college coach that oversees 3 or 4 different teams, like, it's awesome, but there's a lot that goes into that. And then other people say, oh, you know what, like, I want to be a personal trainer and work one-on-one. I'm like, have you ever tried to work with 6 people for an hour back to back to back to back to back and be on for that whole hour from the first minute you meet them to the last minute of their workout? Like, you've got, I hate to say it, but you got to be entertaining them. Like, you're not only giving them the workouts, but you have to make them want to do it. And that is tough. So I think, like, the cool thing about what you've got is, yes, you're in the online space, but you've seen the other facets of what health, wellness, personal training look like. And it sounds like you found something that meets up with what you enjoy doing. I have to imagine from like a work-life balance and however you want to define this, what you have now, it really puts you in the driver's seat with that. And I mean, do you mind talking a little bit about like, what does a kind of a typical week look like for you? Do you try to have days where you chunk out different types of tasks or responsibilities? Do you try to go after each day with some sort of set schedule or routine, or is it really just dependent on kind of what the week brings?
Now that I'm like fully on my own, it is kind of completely different week to week because before we moved down to Florida, I was living in Pittsburgh and I was doing my own online personal training business there and also teaching tons of classes at F45. I think I was doing like 16 to 20 classes a week. And I was also training clients in person too. So there, my days were just like jam packed from before the sun came up to after the sun came down. I was like racing around the city, coaching classes, visiting like clients to do their one on one sessions, getting back home, like also filming YouTube videos. So life there was like very hectic, but I feel like I almost needed that to kind of like push me to where I am now, where I am fully working for myself and creating my own schedule. And that was something I always wanted. I always wanted to be my own boss and not like answer to someone else's schedule, even though I've been blessed with like the best bosses in the entire world. I like being able to pick and choose when I do things, what I put my time into. So I have like a rough structure. I release one YouTube video every single week, Friday mornings at 8 a.m. So I typically film that video either on Monday or Tuesday of that week because I like when my content is like pretty fresh. I used to try to work really far ahead, but then it was almost like the videos people were watching felt too old. So now I do try to film them week of or week before at like the earliest. So I'm typically filming in one YouTube video a week. I try to post on Instagram every other day, but honestly, I'm getting really bad at that. That's something I need to start scheduling into my days. I'm really good about posting on my stories, and I feel like that's where I connect with my audience most. Um, so I try to spend pretty much all morning, like every piece of my morning routine that I do, I document it on my stories. And I feel like that's a big part of my job, as silly as that sounds. Like people look forward to seeing my stories, and it's kind of like an accountability piece for not only my followers, but also myself, like to prove that I'm putting in like the same work I'm preaching to my clients and people who follow me. And then I also have my app. So my app is probably my most like structured part of my job because I upload every single workout that I do. I actually schedule them to go up the night before. So that's like a non-negotiable on my checklist every single day. I didn't even mention my fitness app, but I do have my own fitness app. I upload all of my training programs, all of my workouts, recipes, nutrition education, training education, and I'm constantly adding to it. So, working on my app, working on different client programs, it just kind of depends on what work I have. If I have a lot of clients who need 12-week programs coming up soon, a lot of my day is just me sitting on my computer working on those client programs. If it's a little bit more chill of a week and I don't have as much to do, sometimes I'll get to the pool for an hour while listening to a podcast or still trying to do something that I'm either learning from or getting inspiration from. But it's definitely a much chiller schedule than previous years in my life.
I think it's cool that you had mentioned documenting your day and kind of a lot of engagement through your stories. And people like that authenticity, and they like to know that whoever they're working with or whoever they're getting information from is walking the walk and practicing what they preach. I also think that that's something, and my wife does stuff on like the online space as well, so I see what she goes through on a day-to-day basis, and I don't think people always appreciate the amount of time that goes into it that from the outside observer doesn't look like it's that much, but it's still stuff that you have to be very intentional about and very strategic, and it does take up time of the day. And you had mentioned having the flexibility to do stuff kind of when you want on your own terms, but I also think sometimes people underappreciate the amount of time and effort that goes in to the type of work that you do within that space as well. With transitioning kind of over the last couple of years and getting out of the group classes with F45 and some of the personal training that you're doing and kind of going fully into business for yourself, were there any unexpected challenges that came across, or was there just anything that you didn't think was going to be as difficult, or just something that was new that you didn't even think about, like, oh, I didn't think I'd ever have to worry about this?
Um, it's definitely been like a learn as I go, trial and error. Sometimes I do things, I'm like, oh, this is going to be like such a big hit. People are going to love this. And it gets like no attention or like views or anything at all. And I'm like, dang, I really need to change what I'm doing. So sometimes things that I think are really cool, followers don't think are really cool. And then the whole business side of things is still over my head. And it's not that I'm like, it's mainly just because I haven't put the time in to actually learn about the whole business side of things. And like, mainly because I'm not passionate about learning about that. I'm passionate about learning about health and fitness and nutrition and working with my clients. So I just always kind of put the business side of things like to the back burner and leave that up to someone else. Um, but I do think that it'd probably be better had I learned more about it or stuck with my business minor, like I talked about. But creating the business itself was definitely an experience. I kind of wung it all, learned how to code my own website. Don't really remember how I did things. So I'm constantly having to like re-Google how to do things and make updates and make changes. But fortunately, my following and my clients are all like pretty chill. I don't really get much negative kickback for things. Like I think they understand that I'm kind of just learning as I'm going and going through some trial and error to see what works and to see what they enjoy most. And I also do take a lot of opinions from my clients because they are my target audience. Like they're my customers. So I'm always asking them what they want and making tweaks and adjustments based off of what they say, but also still staying true to myself.
Yeah, and I think it's very important to always have a pulse on what people's perceptions are. And obviously, you have a brand and you have a certain kind of culture that you want to put out into the public space. But you also want to make sure that that's what people are receiving and what they're perceiving as well. And I think one thing that we've really found in our business, and we're a brick and mortar company where people come in for services. We have almost 10 locations now. We've got 58 PTs, I think 35 administrative staff. So we're coming up on like 100 employees. And there's certain things that we do that we just have to do them because it's the only way you can scale a business that way. And yes, it may be different than when we only had 10 people here, but there's also some things that are better than when we only had 10 people here. And one thing that we do try to pride ourselves on is getting feedback from our staff, getting feedback from our patients and clients and other partners in the community. I think just being transparent. And sometimes there are issues that you weren't even aware were an issue for somebody, and it's a simple fix. And it's like, oh, hey, thanks for giving me that heads up. I didn't even realize you couldn't access this on the website, or you couldn't, do whatever you were trying to do. We can fix that tomorrow. And then there's other things that people bring up, and it's like, yeah, that is kind of an issue, but unfortunately, it's the only way we can go about it. But here are the reasons why we do kind of have our hands tied. And if people are aware of what those limitations are, they are much less opinionated on that, and they're a little bit more lenient with that. What kind of going the other direction, getting into this, what do you love most about what you do, or what has been, as you've gone through this journey, I guess what has been just kind of continually reaffirming for you, like, yes, I am doing the right thing. This is making me happy. This is something I really enjoy doing.
Definitely like client and customer testimonials. I am all about like balance, enjoying everything in moderation. And I always tell people that your health and fitness lifestyle should be one that you can genuinely see yourself living for decades, like for the rest of your life. Can you see yourself eating this way? Can you see yourself training this way? It shouldn't be like anything crazy, all or nothing mindset. Like I always say, nothing crazy, nothing drastic, simple changes, and something that is a lifestyle you can do forever. And when I get testimonials back from clients and customers, like telling me how amazing my training programs have been for not only like their physical state, but also like their mental state, because a lot of the girls who come to me and guys are people who are doing way too much physical activity, just like super burnt out and wondering why they're not seeing results and progress. And it's typically because they're not giving their body enough rest. So a lot of my programs prioritize rest and recovery, but hitting those 4 gym sessions a week hard. Like you're training hard, but then you're also resting hard and giving your body the recovery that it needs. And it's really cool when people realize how beneficial the whole rest and recovery piece is in terms of achieving their health and fitness goals, and just getting messages from them. It like makes my day. And I'm like, this is why I do what I do. And it just makes me so happy.
That's awesome. And there's a fine line between a hard workout and a productive workout. And I think that's
Yes.
something that admittedly I struggled with after high school, after college. And you're always used to being in a very structured routine where somebody's giving you a workout to do. It's already scripted. It's already templated. Then you can go to the cafeteria. You have access to whatever food you want, like thinking healthy food. Like there's always just a full salad bar and whatever proteins you need. And then you can pretty much go to bed whenever you want to. And other than, class or workouts in the morning, you're not a full-on adult yet. You don't have all these other roles and responsibilities. So most of your day revolved around working out or doing something physically active, having access to whatever food you wanted, as much of it as you wanted, and then being able to get, good quality sleep, assuming that you were. And then that was the reality for me. Like, all right, now I've got 3 kids. I work, a regular job. My schedule is not the only one that I'm keeping track of. So I don't always know when I'm going to get to bed at night. I don't always know if I'm going to get a great night's sleep because there might be a kid that sneaks into the room, or there might be something that pops up. I may have to stay at work a little bit later or get there a little bit earlier. And that's going to cut into my workout time. And I was guilty of trying to replicate workouts like when I was 18 and 20 at the age of 37 isn't the smartest thing to do. And I would end up getting, a really hard workout in. And then it would lead to having 3 crappy workouts after that because I was tired or I was sore. And I'd get to the end of the week and I'm like, all right, what have I actually accomplished? And I've tried to kind of step back and be realistic with myself of, hey, this is what I need to prioritize. I don't need to be the fastest person in the world or the strongest person in the world. I need to figure out what can I do 5 to 6 days a week for 30 to 60 minutes a day for hopefully the next 40, 50, 60 years, and enjoy doing it. Because that's the other thing is, what you enjoy doing when you're 18, 20, 25 is not always the same as when you're 30, 35, 40, or 50. And that's the really cool thing that I see as a PT is when people have surgeries or they have injuries and they have to kind of reinvent themselves. And it doesn't mean that they never go back to what they wanted to do, but if all they ever did was high intensity, high impact workouts, and now they have an injury that for a set period of time doesn't allow them to do that, but it exposes them to strength training, or it exposes them to swimming or cycling or walking or doing anything. And then they end up having this more well-balanced routine after the injury. And they go back to what they love, but they figured out like that's not my only identity as an athlete or a person. And there's other ways to accomplish those same goals.
Yeah, for sure. And I definitely fell victim to the whole trying to train like I was still a Division 1 collegiate gymnast for a long time. I mean, after college, I immediately moved to Pittsburgh. I was working as a personal trainer, also working at F45. So I was taking F45 classes. I was also strength training on my own. I was long distance running. I was doing sprint intervals. Like I was just trying to do everything and not making any progress at all. And also just not feeling good because I was doing way too much. And it took a long time to kind of reinvent my own health and fitness and find what worked for me as a normal person in society, no longer doing collegiate gymnastics. Like my body doesn't need to be able to do the same things it could back when I was in gymnastics. Honestly, I feel better now and I feel like I probably look better too, but that's because a lot of my health and fitness is much more aesthetic based now, whereas it used to be extremely performance based. And I think it's cool to kind of see the phases someone goes through with health and fitness. And it also helps you appreciate the current phase or like the most optimal phase for that time in your life.
No, and it's a lot of fun from a clinical standpoint. I love just breaking down for people when they say like, "Oh, I'm always having back pain when I do this exercise," and we'll pick on like back squats, and they're like, "Oh, I always have back pain when I do a barbell back squat." I'm like, "All right, well, let's think about this. Why are you even doing them in the first place?" "Oh, well, I want my legs to get stronger." Cool. Did you know that there's a variety of other exercises we can do to make your legs stronger that don't involve putting you in this position or putting this load in this certain space or using that specific mode of resistance? We could maybe just move the weight more anterior. We can do a goblet squat. We can unilaterally load it. We can even do non-weight bearing stuff, and we can put you on a machine or something else. And it's like that aha moment for people where they're like, oh, we don't need to tie a specific exercise to a specific goal. And like for me, I don't need to be powerful and explosive as part of my daily routine. Like I want to have a baseline level of athleticism so I don't look like a goofball working with patients when I'm demonstrating stuff. But I have no need to power clean. I'm not a senior in high school. I'm not playing college football or basketball. Like there's no reason for me to need to power clean. And if my only purpose of doing that in a workout is to maintain some sort of plyometric efficiency, like I can probably do that with just my body weight doing some basic jumping drills. And it's much less technical. It's much less demanding on the overall nervous system. And I'm less likely to get hurt from that as well. So it's that part's always the fun game where you get to be an educator as well for individuals and say like, hey, what are your goals? Awesome. These are the 3 or 4 different things that we have at our disposal to help you meet that goal. If one of those 3 things you don't like doing, awesome, don't do it. Do the other 2 things. Or if one of those things causes pain, then don't do it. You have these other options. So it is kind of cool. And I think that's like for you, that's where that psychology background comes in. And like, how do we feed off of people's mental status and their willingness and their motivation, and realizing that exercise can be a two-way street, and it can be very encouraging and uplifting for people, or it can be very frustrating for people when they've spent time doing things that maybe not be the most appropriate or efficient for what they're trying to accomplish or what their body's capable of doing.
Yeah, for sure. I always tell my clients, I'm like, the best training split, the best fitness routine for you is the one that you enjoy, because that means you'll be consistent with it. And that means you will stick to it. So I always tell them, I write up their programs and I'm like, please tell me if you hate anything. Please tell me if anything hurts. Like we can switch any of these things out to make this more enjoyable so that you can stick to it. So there are tons of different options out there. And I think a lot of people don't understand that, but it is that aha moment, like you said, where they're like, oh, I didn't need to be doing this. I don't need to do this if it hurts. There are so many different things I could do in this exercise's place.
No, that's awesome. Well, Julie, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come on here. For those that are interested either in learning more about you or what you do, or just following along with your journey, what's the best way for them to follow along or reach out to you?
On my Instagram, I am at Julia Merwin. No underlines, no periods. It is just my full name, Julia Merwin. I have basically everything linked in my bio. You can find my app linked in my Instagram bio. I try to get back to every single DM because I've been on the other side of DMs with no response. So I take great pride in getting back to every DM I get. And then also my app DMs are like my main priority if you want to chat one-on-one. And then on YouTube, I am also just Julia Merwin. I post weekly, like I mentioned before. And that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Well, Julia, great catching back up with you. For those who are listening, this is the Strength and Knowledge Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share, like, and subscribe, and stay tuned for our next episode.